All right, this is a few weeks after I finished the Venomnibus. I say omnibus, but I think it was pronounced a different way. But I just say it like that; it sounds better. But yeah, I finished the Venom omnibus, and this was my favorite comic, bro. I liked it better than the Immortal Hulk, even though I like the Hulk better than Venom. But man, this comic it was just crazy. But let's see. So Eddie Brock, I just have to say that Eddie Brock is a way better Venom than Flash Thompson was. Like, even though Flash Thompson is like Agent Venom and he works with Spider Man, I think the reason why I like Eddie Brock's Venom more is because it actually feels like two different characters. Like, you have Eddie Brock and then you have Venom. But with Flash, it's kind of like Venom just operates to as like an extension of Flash's character only. Like, Venom is not really his own person. He's just like here to, give Flash Thompson the powers and heal him and stuff like that. And he's kind of just like a power in itself. Like, he's not his own person. But with Eddie Brock in this specific story, they characterize Venom like a lot more. Like, there were moments throughout the entire book where they kind of like got split up, and then we actually got to see Venom's thoughts on everything going on, which I thought was pretty cool. And it made sense because, I mean, like, this whole symbiote stuff going on, and how he's like the first child of Null, and then you have Carnage, who is like his child, and then the fact that after Dylan Brock got introduced, and he kind of started like being a parent to him too. So I like how they made him much more of a character. Wait, hold on. Ugh. It's freaking hot in here. But yeah, I like how they made Venom more of a like standalone character, gave him a personality, a moral code of his own, and he just wasn't always agreeing with Eddie, or kind of just like used as a form of power. And he was like doing his own thing at some points, because there were even moments where they were going back and forth where Eddie was like for instance, when Carnage, he was trying to where he was trying to like take over Norman Osborn. And Venom was like, bro, we gotta kill Norman Osborn. Like, it doesn't matter if he's in control or if Carnage is in control. Like, we can't take no chances. Just kill him right now. And then Eddie Brock was like, no, I'm not killing anyone. So then Venom was like, all right, then do what you want to do, but I'm gonna split up. And then they split up. And then Eddie Brock, he went over to go help some people. And then Venom was like doing his own thing. And and I thought that was pretty cool how like they separated them. And Dylan Brock, we found out from him that he was actually Eddie's son. Like, at first, we all thought he was his little brother, and then we found out that after a whole bunch of stuff happened and the family like fell out, and then Anne returned to Eddie's dad's house to like give him the baby to take care of. That was when Eddie came into the picture like way later, and then tried to act like he was his older brother rather than his father, because that was at the time when Eddie was doing a whole bunch of bad stuff, so he didn't really want Dylan to be like caught up in that life. So he left for a while, came back, and then he finally took Dylan back after he saw how his dad was treating him, because his dad did the same thing to Eddie when he was younger. He was like beating him and stuff like that, and he did the same thing to Dylan. So then Eddie finally took him in, and then they got involved with all this stuff that was happening with Carnage, the Maker, and then they got help from Spider-Man. So Spider-Man played a big part in this earlier portion, because they were both trying to like work together to figure out all this symbiote stuff, because Spider-Man, he kept commenting, he was like, man, this is all my fault, because I was like the first one with a symbiote and I brought him here. So Eddie was kind of trying to tell him like, no, it's not your fault, but we got to figure something out to do, because like, no, he's about to come to Earth trying to freaking kill everybody. And then you have Carnage, who's trying to like build up all these codices or like codices. I don't know how you pronounce it, but It's basically like a codex, which is in each person that was a former user of like the symbiote suits, where it left like this thing within them, and he's trying to collect them to gain a bunch of power. And he actually almost did it, because at one point he collected a pretty big amount of the codex things, and he combined it with himself, and he turned into like this demon symbiote or something. And um and that was pretty much his whole goal. So then when things got out of hand, they had to go to the maker, who we found out was like an alternate version of Reed Richards. He's from the Ultimate Universe, and he's that universe's Reed Richards. So he kind of like had his own motives that we later found out, and they built on those more. But he had his own motives, but they went to him because he also had knowledge on all this stuff, and then he was also kind of working on that stuff ahead of time, like how to deal with all these symbiotes. And then um and then just when they were about to, like, try and figure out these things with him, then we saw that he had a symbiote, and his symbiote was the Venom symbiote from his universe, but it was like engineered, like scientifically engineered. So he can pretty much change it and do anything he wants with that suit, compared to Eddie's Venom, which is just like the normal suit, and you can't really change it or add anything to it. So he had a stronger symbiote, and then they started fighting. But then before they could finish their fight, then this dude Virus comes in, and he was like chasing Eddie down the whole entire time until he like messed something up, and then everybody just got scattered across the Marvel universe, because the Maker, he got transported back to his universe, and then Virus, Eddie, and Dylan, they went to like a completely different place, where all these symbiotes were kind of like making themselves look like the Avengers. And um and then that was when we met all the heroes left in that universe that were trying to, like, take them down. And Agent Venom in that universe was actually Anne Wayne, who was Eddie Brock's wife. And in our timeline, she had killed herself, but in their timeline, Eddie was the one that killed himself back in the church. So, they were both feeling bad, but at the same time, they were like, how are you alive? Like, they were just questioning each other. And then Eddie, he started yelling because Cletus Cassidy, he was behind them, but in this universe, he's like a good guy. So it was him, Wade Wilson, Peter Parker, and then one other person. But those were like the new agents that were trying to stop everything going on in this world that was like ruled by this evil version of Dylan Brock, who is called Codex. So he was like taken over mentally by Null, because he kept using his powers and stuff like that. Because I guess somehow Null and Dylan's powers are kind of linked, and I think, if I remember, they basically said that Dylan's powers were pretty much made because when Anne gave birth to when she gave birth to Dylan, her codex just completely passed over to him. So instead of it kind of like branching off to him, like where she still keeps her codex and he keeps his, it just completely went to him. And I guess they formed this power where he can pretty much like not like bond with symbiotes, but like kind of like hurt them, I guess. So or like repel them, I guess is a better word. So anyways, he got these like new powers, and then took over the world in this other universe. And then Eddie and they were kind of trying to work together to figure out how to get back to their own universe. So then we fast forward an entire year of them being stuck in this place, and then they finally get out, and then they return back to our original universe. And then that's when all these other things start happening, because finally Null came back to Earth. So you see all the dragons come down, all the symbiote dragons. Then you see all the other heroes trying to fight off like the symbiotes that are like covering the entire world. So there's just a whole bunch of stuff going on. And then eventually, it was like a random portion of the book, but Eddie, he ended up getting like this Asgardian stone or whatever. and it gave him Asgardian powers. And this was when he was separated from the Venom suit again, and he got like these powers that pretty much manifest whatever your desire is or whatever you're thinking about. I forgot what the explanation was, but he ended up basically getting these powers that gave him this similar suit to what he had with Venom, and then he had all these guns and stuff like that too, which was pretty cool. And then he was like taking down some of the symbiote creatures and doing all that stuff. And then we also found out that Virus was Scorpion, because apparently he was like paralyzed or something was wrong with his legs, and then Eddie kind of left him there. So that was the whole reason why he was chasing after Eddie. But it's like, bro, you just fucking caused this whole thing where they got transported to a whole nother universe, and then they got stuck there for a year, all because you were fucking mad. Like, you could have did something completely different. But that was also the maker's fault, because he had the fucking portal in the first place. So I mean, it was a little bit of everybody's fault. But and then we also got the return of Flash Thompson. That was when he was Agent Anti-Venom. So he had the Anti-Venom suit while Eddie Brock had his own powers. And he was kind of like doubting himself, because he was like, everybody likes you as the better Venom, and I don't think I should have these powers. And then Flash Thompson, he kind of just reassured him, like, bro, you're fit for this. You know, let's do it. Like, we got to take down Null. And then one of the cool moments was actually when Flash Thompson, he actually turned into like one of those symbiote dragons of his own. And it was like a big white dragon. And then that was when he was fighting another symbiote dragon. And then you had the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, the X-Men. You know, there were a ton of groups that were out there just trying to fight off all these like symbiote forces and shit like that. And eventually we saw that the Enigma Force, which was actually supposed to be like the opposite to what Null was, because Null, the whole time they were saying like he was the darkness itself and he was fighting the Celestials and whatnot. But the opposite to that is like the light. And they were pretty much saying that this force lost to Null the first time around, and that it kind of operates similar to a symbiote, which it actually makes sense. And I'm glad that they actually said that in this book, because it pretty much makes sense with what happened in a lot of the past comics. But they said that the Enigma Force is similar to a symbiote in the form of like it gets stronger when it has a host. So the Enigma Force is pretty much when it makes like the user Captain Marvel or something like that. I mean, not Captain Marvel, Captain Universe, where it gives them all these like cosmic powers. So the Enigma Force ends up bonding with Eddie. It said like, you were the chosen one, or not you were the chosen one, but you were the one I choose. And then Silver Surfer kind of just like let the energy go down to whoever it chose. It chose Eddie. And then after that, he also pulled Mjolnir and Silver Surfer's board, fused them into like an axe, like a battle axe. And then he just started freaking beating the shit out of Null. And I was just like, bro, that was freaking crazy. Like, that means he had the cosmic powers of the Enigma Force, then the cosmic powers of Galactus, technically, because that's what Silver Surfer's powers are, and the board was coated with that same stuff that he was. And then he also had the god powers of Thor's Mjolnir hammer. So he pretty much had god powers and cosmic powers. And then he just started beating up Null, and then they finally figured out the issues and stuff like that and got rid of him. And then we also saw that by the end of the book, Eddie, he kind of turned into like this god of the symbiotes, you know. Like, that was what Spider-Man was saying. He was like, it's kind of weird now that you went from being like a normal Venom, like how I was, to pretty much being the god of the symbiotes. And we see him pretty much being in all these different areas at the same time, and he's able to control like symbiote dragons and other symbiotes that are, yeah, like fighting against other villains and stuff like that, which I thought was pretty cool. And then we also saw Dylan as like pretty much just a normal kid in school. but now he's walking around with the symbiote Sleeper, which I hope they bond more in the future. It sucks that he can't go on to Dylan though, because they actually did try that earlier on, and then like Dylan's powers kept pushing off Sleeper, so they couldn't actually bond. But then at one point, Venom was able to bond with Dylan. So I don't know. It's just confusing with how his powers interact with certain symbiotes, or how they interact with Sleeper specifically, and then Venom specifically. But I hope they build on Dylan's character in the future. And then right now, like I said, I'm still reading King in Black. I need to go back to reading it. It's been like 5 days since I last read it. But in that one, it's kind of going from the perspectives of everybody else in the situation. So this one was like more of Eddie and his family. So like Eddie was talked about a lot more. Dylan, and we got to see their relationship with Eddie's dad. And then the other universe where we saw Anne Wayne, his wife, in the alternate universe. Then we saw Carnage. So we saw a lot more stuff tied to the symbiote stuff, and then Eddie's family specifically, or at least the people close to him. And then in this King in Black one, it kind of goes over the perspectives of everybody else. So we see from the point of view of like the X-Men and the Avengers, the Fantastic Four. Like all these different groups are pretty much going against Null at the same time, and they're trying to figure out what the hell they can do. So I'm not sure if this takes place like at the same time as the Venom series is. So like by the end of this King in Black one, then we'll see the same ending, or if it's like a little bit after. So I guess I'll just have to wait. I'm like a little bit over halfway done with it, but it's pretty good so far. But I still think that this Venom one is a little bit better, a little bit better. And then I also wanted to check out the comic for the Absolute Carnage, because that one also played a big part in this one, especially earlier in the book where Carnage was more present and he was like attacking Eddie Brock and Dylan Brock and Spider-Man, and he was pretty much just trying to like expand his forces, where he was trying to like take over more and more people to make more codexes by giving more people symbiotes, where they had like that swirl on their head, and he was trying to take over that way. And I wanted to check that out, especially because like towards the end too, they kept mentioning like this concept of how the world is white, black, and red. Like how white is light and black is death, and then you have red, which is like life and blood and stuff like that. So I thought that was cool with how they tied that in, especially when you look at the three main symbiotes are Venom, Anti-Venom, and Carnage. So yeah, I thought this story was pretty good, but I really do want to check out the Absolute Carnage series. I also saw that that Red Goblin series. That one looked really crazy. Like Green Goblin fused with Carnage, bro. Like that had to have been a good story. But overall, I thought this was pretty good. Uh, what rating? I would say a 10 out of 10. I would read it again. Yeah, 10 out of 10. I'm thinking of checking out some X-Men comics though. I want to check out some X-Men comics, some Daredevil and Elektra comics. Like I think that's what I want to go to next. But yeah, I'll probably have to make a video of the King in Black series soon. So yeah.